In 2015, Hayao Miyazaki was shown an AI-generated animation, to which he responded with,
そんなに気持ち悪いものをやりたいなら勝手にやってればいいだけで、僕はこれを自分たちの仕事をつなげたいとは全然思いません。極めて何か生命に対する侮辱を感じます。
That was over 10 years ago. Cut forward to present day, and I can't tell what's real anymore. It wasn't that long ago when AI-generated images and video were only good for shitposting. And now I can't tell if the Instagram baddie I'm stalking is an actual human being or an AI honeypot being run off some 18-year-old's laptop in New Delhi. The strangest part though is that we all just collectively let this happen. Do you remember back in 2021 when every AI-generated image still looked like something out of a fever dream? Even back then, there was already a growing counter-movement against AI-generated content, led mainly by those from artistic professions. And then OpenAI dropped GPT-4o, and any mainstream resistance to AI-generated content was drowned under a bukkake of giblified Instagram posts.
Any numbers for us?
I don't know if I can share an exact number, but like way more images than I thought the internet had like appetite to do. Like we will cross 1 billion total images in the not distant future, I can say that.
I wonder how Miyazaki feels knowing that his art was fed to and emulated by a bunch of computer chips, and ultimately formed the beginning point of the AI slop era that we live in today. We'll never know for sure, but boy can we assume.
But
is Miyazaki right on this one? Is AI-generated content really that bad? Or is Japan's human national treasure just out of touch? Well, let's start with the obvious. Not all AI-generated content is bad. There's no denying the utility of AI in fields like science, where ChatGPT recently disproved an almost century-old maths theory, or technology, where Claude just piloted NASA's Mars rover. What we're talking about today is AI content explicitly for the purposes of entertainment. And on this, I think the old grump got it right. In fact, I don't think it's an overstatement to say that AI content poses an existential threat to society.
I think AI will probably, most likely sort of lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
But the reasons for why this is the case are not so simple. So let's break it down. If I had made this video even a year ago, it would have been pretty easy to say that AI content, despite coming a long way, was still pretty ass. Even in 2025, most AI images still had that distinctive piss filter look, and AI videos just felt like a bad ayahuasca trip. But in 2026, that same argument is no longer true. If you don't believe me, poke your head into the cesspool of AI goonbait Insta models that rake in thousands within a month of being set up. We've reached the point where for most people, the quality of AI is good enough. Good enough to be consumed while doom scrolling on the toilet or rotting in bed. Slop, so to speak. The danger with slop is, the more we consume, the more it becomes normalized as the standard for all content. In fact, a third of all content on YouTube may already be AI slop. The consequence of this for us as consumers of content is that our ability to process anything remotely complex, ambiguous, or thought-provoking is being eroded by a ceaseless tide of Stephen Hawking's wrestling clips and Chinese Kanye music videos.
昨日像那东流水，离我远去不可留，今热暖我心多烦忧。
With that being said, the argument that we should not consume AI content simply because there's better human-made stuff out there is one that will eventually fade. Given the rate at which generative AI is improving, it's not hard to imagine that in the near future, even the most exceptional long-form content, whether that be a well-written novel or a full-length movie, might all be generatable through AI. In fact, AI content crossing the threshold from slop into good is something that arguably has already happened, with instances like Sienna Rose, an AI-generated musician who recently had 3 songs in the Spotify Top 50. And while you can argue that the human-made stuff will always be more intrinsically valuable due to the time, effort, and soul invested, this is ultimately a cope. The average person crashing on their couch after slogging through their 9 to 5 is unlikely to give two shits about whether their Netflix binge watch was human-made or AI generated. And so, perhaps the most compelling arguments against AI content are not those about why we shouldn't consume it, but rather why we shouldn't create it in the first place. Let's start with the easiest one. AI-generated content is derived from billions of pieces of art and media, made, of course, by humans, none of whom consented to their work being scraped from the internet and used to train the robots who will probably replace them. And it's not like the AI companies didn't know that what they were doing was dodgy. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, downloaded over 7 million books from pirate sites to be used as part of its training data. Likewise, Meta torrented at least 81 terabytes of content to train its large language models. It's funny that in order to source their training data, these trillion-dollar companies have resorted to the same methods that I did back in the day to source my next Naruto episode. They should have hired me for the job. Anyway, it's why writers, musicians, illustrators, and other artists are currently slamming AI companies with the mother of all lawsuits, with settlements landing in the billions. But IP theft is almost a distraction from the bigger issue, which is that every piece of content generated by AI brings us closer to a reality without artists. This sounds dramatic and pretentious until you look at what's already happening and what art has always been for those who make it. Within the same documentary that the Miyazaki clip at the start of this video is from, he later elaborates on his comments, saying that humans have lost faith in themselves, and that the world is coming to an end. And then he doubles down on his stance that drawing your animations by hand is the only way, even though, and I quote, "It's really hard and exhausting." Firstly, unfathomably based individual. Man saw one AI clip and concluded that the world was going to end, which is a bit dramatic. But what he says about humanity losing faith in itself goes to the heart of what is starting to happen now due to generative AI. Most of us, at some point, have engaged in the creation of art, which, when you boil it down, is just the act of making something that evokes emotion in oneself and those that encounter it. From something as simple as a student writing their first story, to Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. The feeling of bringing something of value into existence with your own hands is a core experience for most of us that often has an impact on what we decide to do with our lives. And as Miyazaki said, this feeling comes from the fact that it takes a lot of exhausting work for a human to produce something of value. Now imagine instead of making the art yourself, you resort to ChatGPT. I'd say losing faith in humanity is a pretty accurate summation. You send a vaguely coherent description of what you want to some robot hosted in San Francisco, and it spits out in 8 seconds what would have taken you hours, days, months even, to produce. The creative thinking, the time spent honing your skills and executing the idea, you've outsourced it to some tech company. What atrophying effect does this have on our innate ability to create? What does it mean for the futures of those who've grown up in the era of AI? No one has a definitive answer, but I am pretty sure we are witnessing live the extinction of artists as a profession. While we're still in the early stages of this, the signs are already there. A recently published US study surveyed around 400 artistic professionals on how generative AI has impacted their careers, with most reporting a decrease in earnings, reduced job security, and a general sense of doom about their future as an artist. This lines up with moves being made by media giants like Netflix, who quietly introduced a contract clause allowing them to use voice actor recordings to train their AI models, or Spotify's recent announcement of an AI feature that will remix artists' songs. Taking all of this into account, it would appear we're moving towards the worst timeline, where being an artist will no longer be a viable way to make a living, which is just sad because becoming an artist has always represented the possibility of pursuing a life doing something you're passionate about. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe what it means to be an artist will simply change. Instead of painting or writing or pretty much anything else, it'll just be prompting a robot to do it for you instead. So I guess the most compelling reason against generating AI content is that it will probably result in the death of the artistic profession, at least as we know it. The great irony is that we all thought AI would free us from tedious labor, but now that we finally have it, we're letting it automate the fun stuff instead. Maybe Miyazaki understood this all the way back in 2015, and that's why he was so adamantly against it. Presumably, he spent the last decade or so watching exactly what it was that he opposed so strongly slowly become part of the mainstream. Knowing him though, his response will be to continue making art the way he and his studio always have. By hand, slowly, painfully, and without the help of ChatGPT.